Yesterday's News.
Hello and welcome to Old News, the programme and podcast which looks at news stories of the day through the papers of yesterday. Scouts today, inspired by a little piece I spotted in the Good News section of Manx Radio's website. From Past to Future, First Douglas Scouts Open Day, looking back at the history of the Scouts, going right back to the early days of the 20th century, of course. So it sent me scurrying to the archives to see how Scouts feature quite a lot, you'll be pleased to hear. And we can take you right the way back, in fact, to the early days of the movement. If we look at the Ramsey Courier of Tuesday, April the 4th, 1911, a momentous day for the movement, Scouts Day in Manxland. The article is entitled Visit of General Baden-Powell, Successful Displays, Interesting Speeches by the Chief Scout, Doing a Good Turn. Saturday, it starts, was a red letter day in the annals of Insular Boy Scouts when the Chief Scout, Lieutenant General Sir R.S.S. Baden-Powell, the hero of Mafeking, paid them a visit on a tour of inspection. He arrived by the steamer Snaefell during the afternoon and motored at once to Government House. The demonstration here proved a very popular event, and some hundreds of ladies and gentlemen, including the principal personages of the island, assembled to witness it. The following troops were engaged, and then it lists them all from the various groups. It goes on that the Scouts were secreted in the most inconspicuous way around the field, and the saluting point in the centre was marked by the Union Jack. Here, Commissioner F.C. Harris took up his position, attended by a bugler. Upon the Chief Scout's arrival, he was warmly welcomed, we're told, by His Excellency and Lady Raglan. The scene which was presented for the next hour was uniquely interesting and amusing. The young Scouts were soon absorbed in various kinds of field work. Some of them lit up fires with materials quickly gathered in the neighbourhood and erected over them stands for suspending billy cans. Others set up tents or made rough shelters of branches or trees. One of the troops built a serviceable bridge over a hedge and ditch. Several parties engaged in ambulance work, and wounded men were being skillfully bandaged and transported about on stretchers in all directions. The bugle bands of the Douglas troops and the King William's College and Russian Corps proudly paraded the ground, filling the air with martial music. Quite a spectacle, you would think. There was then an address by the Chief Scout, who addressed, we are told, the ranks, and pretty much all his speech is transcribed. If I give you a section of it, he said, "I saw a Boy Scout the other day, and I asked him what his good turn had been. He said he was ashamed that he had not been able to do a good turn at all, but he had just picked up a bit of orange peel from the parapet. I said, 'My lad, that is a good turn. Someone might have slipped on that piece of orange peel and got hurt. It does not matter how small the good turn is as long as you do it, no matter what it costs you. Even if it is at the risk of your life, well, do it. I am glad to see that one or two of you have done that. I had a letter," he went on, "from New Zealand the other day, telling me one of our scouts there doing a good turn in that way at great risk to himself. He was on the shore, and there was a big gale raging, and the sea was very high. A small boy got into a little canoe. We don't ask why. And the canoe suddenly got carried out into the current, and this boy was being carried away out to sea. The boy got 2 or 3 other scouts together, and between them they launched a boat that was there, and they got up to this little chap just as he was sinking, and then they had a tremendous struggle to get back to the land. It took them 2 hours and a quarter to row back, and they were nearly swamped several times. But at last they managed to get ashore. I gave that boy a medal for his deed, not because it was out of the way for a boy to do that, but because he was a cripple and he could not use his legs properly. Of course it wasn't out of the way for them to risk their lives. 3 lads on their own, rowing out to save another boy. They were made of tough stuff, don't they? He did not think of that," he goes on. "He thought only of the little boy in danger and did all he could to save him. That is the right spirit, and that is the spirit that Scouts have got." Quite right too. Remains so to this day, I like to think. If we go to the Isle of Man Times, Saturday, January the 8th of 1910, in Sir Baden-Powell's Boy Scouts Scout Notes, we're told the Douglas troop took the opportunity during the Christmas and New Year holidays of increasing the knowledge of scoutcraft, and each day is a record of something accomplished, something done. Instead of following the usual custom at the festive time of year, and making general holiday, the Scouts set themselves a programme which, to say the least, was strenuous, and although not carried out in its entirety, owing to the unsettled weather, sufficient was done, however, to keep the Scouts deeply interested and to whet their appetites for more. An excellent and instructive day's work was accomplished on Monday. The operations were commenced immediately on leaving Douglas and continued until Langigan was reached, wherever that might be, and the roads were carefully avoided and advantage taken of the concealment possible by following the riverbed. The Scouts were delighted with their day's outing, one of the most ambitious yet attempted, and the impression made on the Scouts is best illustrated by the fact that urgent requests are being made to repeat the scheme. It is hoped that it will be possible, it goes on, to organise for the Easter holidays a scheme wherein all the boys' brigades on the island and also all the various troops of Scouts will be able to take part. It is gratifying to learn that another troop of Scouts is being or is about to be formed in Onken. This is only as it should be. The more troops formed, the keener will be the recruiting and competition, with the result that more boys are gathered in and the troops are animated by a spirit of friendly rivalry which spells efficiency. It is not intended to form a corps d'élite in any village or town. The movement is open to every physically fit lad in the district, be he rich or poor, short or tall, the idea being to get numbers and inculcate the right spirit into every boy that can be got hold of, and to encourage the idea of self-improvement. Quite right too. Going a little bit further forward to 1934 in the Isle of Man Examiner of Friday, March the 9th, Scouts entertained Scouts. St Andrew's Rover Scouts entertained the Maloo and Ramsey Rovers in St Andrew's Clubroom on Monday evening. A very interesting deck tennis tournament was held. What is deck tennis? And later, the Reverend J. Jackson gave a talk on cleanliness and sport, in which he touched on the reminiscences of his father and himself during their respective football careers. Before the close, Group Scoutmaster E. Corlett, on behalf of the Officers, Rovers and Sea Scouts, presented a bureau to Mr. and Mrs. N. Brown, who were recently married. Mrs. Ford and a few lady helpers had charge of the catering. To 1940 in the Isle of Man Times, Saturday, June the 1st, Scouts and Guides Empire Day Rally. Funds for air ambulances and lifeboat. Now, who would have known there was an air ambulance going in 1940? On Saturday, the article begins, Rovers, Sea Scouts, Scouts, Guides and Brownies from all parts of the island gathered at the playing fields in Douglas for their usual Empire Day rally. The members from the out towns marched from the station and the town members from their various halls to the assembly ground, where they were met by the island commissioners, Mr. and Mrs. Cunningham, the Eastern District Commissioner, Mr. W.A. Fife, the Assistant Commissioner of the Eastern and Western Districts, Mr. T.O. Fisher, the Treasurer and Secretary of the Guides, Mrs. W.L. Clegg, and the Island Camp Advisor, Miss G. Dearden. The Scouts were led into the assembly ground by the Douglas Town Band, sadly depleted in numbers on account of the war. No sooner had they met than heavy rain commenced and fell throughout the ceremony, and during the march through the town to the Scouts' Hall, where tea was provided for the out-town members. After the charge in to the saluting bases, Mrs. W. Cunningham received purses of money from the Guides and Brownies, which had been collected towards the provision of 2 air ambulances, which are estimated to cost £15,000. This was 1940, remember, and a small motor lifeboat to cost £5,000, which the Guides of the Empire have undertaken to provide for the use of the forces. Before receiving the gifts, Mrs. Cunningham said that during the last war they had raised £25,000, but at that time they only numbered 60,000, and there were today 500,000 in Great Britain alone. She felt sure that the island would do its full share in the effort, and I'm sure we did. In 1941, Friday, February the 7th, in the Examiner, we hear now we're to have Air Scouts, outlines of new scheme, Boy Scouts, Sea Scouts, and now Air Scouts. Imperial headquarters of the Boy Scout Association have just issued a long memorandum setting out the new scheme, and this shows that Air Scouts will receive the ordinary Scout training with special additional tuition appropriate to the branch. For the time being, the scheme will be confined to Scouts, that is to say, there will be no Air Rovers at present. It is believed that most boys of 16 and upwards who are interested in aerial matters will want to join the Air Training Corps, and those who are unable to join this unit will, if they wish, be able to remain Air Scouts until they reach the age of 18. It is felt that the introduction of Air Scouts will provide a new and attractive activity, particularly for boys of 14 to 16 years who are not old enough to join the ATC, and it should also form a useful preliminary training for those who afterwards join the ATC. For this reason, the proposal has the cordial approval and encouragement of the Air Ministry, who are giving valuable advice and assistance whilst taking no responsibility for the running of the scheme. Very wise. The special training of Air Scouts will include particular attention to existing proficiency badges, which have a special value in this connection, and in addition, there has been introduced the following new proficiency badges: Air Apprentice, Air Mechanic, and Air Navigator. Air Scouts, who'd have known? 1949 in the Examiner, Friday, September the 30th, Campcraft competition, a severe test for young scouts, we're told. The annual Scout Campcraft competition for scouts under 15 years was held at the Fortfield, Castlewood, Braddon, by kind permission of D. Ballard last week. 8 teams from 5 groups consisting of 6 scouts took part and underwent a fairly severe test in camping and items of scout activity in very pleasant weather, apart from a thunderstorm during the night, which did no harm to anybody. The tests included cooking, discipline, punctuality, first aid, a campfire item, inspections, gadgets use and care of axe and knife, nature observation, a game, and general camping. Out of a possible 160 marks, the winning patrol, the Stormy Petrels of 4th Douglas Group, gained 120, the runners-up, King William's College Bulldog Patrol, gaining 117. Well done, the Petrels. Bob a Job. You can't have scouting or cubs without Bob a Job, can you? In the Green Final, Saturday, April the 16th, 1949, in Letterbox, Scout National Bob a Job Week, a letter from the Assistant Island Commissioner. The Chief Scout, Lord Rowallan, has called upon every wolf, cub, scout, senior scout and scouter in Great Britain and Northern Ireland to earn the sum of at least 1 shilling for scout funds during the week April the 18th to April the 23rd. This step has been made necessary by reduction of investment income during recent years and by the expenses incurred in the rebuilding of scouting since the war. Our movement, with a membership in the United Kingdom of nearly 500,000, has won the support of your readers in the past, and it is with confidence I appeal to them to find jobs for the Scouts during next week. Any odd job they consider to be within the capabilities of boys will be welcomed. It is a principle of scouting that as far as possible the boys shall earn their own funds, and I have no hesitation in asking the public through your columns to support their efforts. Each scout will be in possession of a card authorising him to work on behalf of the movement. On this card, the employer is asked to enter the nature of the work carried out by the boy and the amount paid to him. You will be doing scouting a very good turn, sir, by publishing this letter, says Mr. Kineen, as I say, the Assistant Island Commissioner. Do we still have Bob a Job? I haven't seen a Bob a Job scout or cub for years, but perhaps they do. Maybe they just don't come to Cronkervoddy. 1957 in the Examiner, Friday, May the 17th. Facts and figures about scouting. Do you know that the Boy Scout movement is 50 years old in 1957? A little bit older now. World Scouts are to commemorate the Jubilee of Scouting and the centenary of Lord Baden-Powell with a World Scout Jamboree, Rover Moot and Scouters Indaba at Sutton Park, Warwickshire, from August the 1st to the 12th, 1957, and that 35,000 scouts will take part. Another interesting fact, Baden-Powell tested the ideas on which scouting was to be based at a camp on the island of Brownsea in Poole Harbour, England, in 1907. As a result of the Brownsea camp in 1907, the book Scouting for Boys by Baden-Powell was published in fortnightly parts and has since become one of the first 3 world bestsellers translated into many languages. And that in the world, and that was of 1957, there are 7 million scouts in over 100 different countries. Pretty impressive. It also points out that in the UK, over 50,000 men and women voluntarily give up much of their spare time to acting as scoutmasters and cubmasters without payment. Well, that's what volunteers are, isn't it? And finally, once a scout, always a scout. bit like being a bard, I would have thought. The Isle of Man Times, Friday, December the 11th, 1959. The governor at Baden-Powell Guild dinner, a 78th birthday gift to T.O. Speaking at the annual dinner of the 1st Douglas Branch Baden-Powell Scout Guild on Monday at the Metropole Hotel, His Excellency the Lieutenant Governor revealed that he was once a scout and, quote, once a scout, always a scout, he added. Speakers stressed the importance of the role of the Boy Scout movement in youth welfare work and the opportunity it gave to old scouts to help in that work. Quite right too, and I see the Londu Choir were busy recording something as well, looking at the picture above. Scouting, still going strong. You know what? I was never a cub or a scout, although my brother and lots of my friends were. I think I might have missed out somewhere along the line. Still doing good work. Long may they continue, scouts, cubs, brownies, rangers, and all the rest. Whichever way you look at it, it's old news. Until next week. Dib dib dib. Cheerio.
You're gonna be yesterday's news.